Hey everybody, it is a new year. That means new art supplies. So I wanted to try some new stuff this year, and I was in the art store because I needed some things. So today we're going to try this new kind of, it's not a new kind of watercolor, that's what I wanted to say. I've never tried watercolor that came in tubes before. I've only ever used this kind of stuff, which is, it comes dry and you wet activated watercolor. I've only ever used that in my entire life. Never used anything like this before that comes in tubes. And I know they also come in like those little ink bottles too, but those run a bit expensive because they're individual dropper things. But I saw this and I thought it'd be interesting to try. And I'm also going to show you guys how to set up a wet palette if you've never heard of that before. It is basically a paint palette, but that it stays wet and it's like in a closed container, airtight container or something like that. And I had to get a new container because the one that I previously used got rusty, and I mistakenly let a wet palette, wet paper towel in there for too long. And when I was like, I should toss this, I saw some rust underneath here. So I'm just gonna use this for something else. I'm not gonna put any moisture in here anymore. So I got a new container, simple plastic, shouldn't rust. It might mold, but that'll be easier to clean than rust. I just have to take care of this a little bit better. So I'm going to show you guys how to set up that today because I have this brand new container. So I need to set this up first so I can paint this. So this is a really cheap plastic container. I believe it's like for photo storage, like you can fit photos in here. So to set up a wet palette, you're going to need a few things. Some kind of container that has a top or it's airtight, water, paper towels, and either palette paper or wax paper, like a baking sheet kind of paper. So the palette paper that I use is from Blick, and it's just in this giant pad, and I just cut the sheets so I can fit it in my little wet palette. So I cut a little sheet that'll fit in here, and it's like a nice wax paper. It's specifically designed for holding paint. It'll dry if you don't wet it. And so that's when I started getting into figuring out how to keep my paint wet so that I could keep reusing them. So I have paper towel, see if this will fit in here, just fold it in half and wet it. Now that that's wet, I'm gonna put your wax paper or palette paper right on top of the wet. And just from this being on top of that wet paper, it will keep your paint wet for a pretty long time. I've had, like I said, I rested my palette, so I left it in there for weeks. And there you go. Super easy, super cheap. They sell specific wet palettes that come with the paper and, you know, come with the container. But those, if you want a cheaper option, you can get your own container and, you know, paper towels and water. Really. And, you know, some kind of wax paper to put in here. So this is the Artist Loft brand. I go to Michael's for all my art stuff. So this is like one of their store brands, and it has 12 little tubes, and I think it was like $20, pretty cheap. Okay, so it comes in these little trays. So we have white, yellow, some reds, and a pink color, blue, green, yellow ochre, burnt sienna, burnt umber, and black. So I think it's a pretty good range because I can mix a lot of these colors too. So I'm just going to put out a little bit of every one of these colors because I don't really know how these look and I want everything available to me. I drew a little quick sketch in my sketchbook, and I'm pretty much going to need most of these colors. So I'm just going to get everything out and do a little test on the opposite page. So these are 12 milliliter tubes. Okay, a little bit of oil in there, kind of like my gouache tubes. So with any paint, there is a kind of smell because it's made of all different kinds of things and pigments. And This paint has a smell. Not bad, but I can describe it as like vegetable. It kind of smells like carrots. That's like the closest thing I could describe it to. It kind of smells vegetably like a carrot. And this one color here, the yellow ochre, really dry for some reason. I can barely get it out of the tube compared to the rest of these, which have bits of oil or water in there. This one is almost completely dry, which is weird because I just opened these. These were brand new, it was closed. So, I don't know. Sometimes I will do a little spray to keep the area wet. I'm gonna wet a brush. I'm gonna use one of these kinds of round brushes. And I just wanna do some tests on this side because I've never used this before. I don't know what the colors look like. There's no like paint swatch page or anything like that. So, very vibrant. I love the way these are looking right now so far. I'm not like painting really with them yet, but I love the colors. They're really, really vibrant, and I'm not even like using that much of the paint because I just want to do really quick swatches. It's really nice. And now that these are, the paint swatch is a little closer, the paint is closer to me, the smell is tough. So I recommend like having a fan on or air purifier or something to ventilate a bit. So those are all the colors. I'll definitely be mixing because I have portrait here that I'm gonna need some skin tones with, but would like to do a little bit of a underpainting wash. I'm gonna use a different brush. Okay. This, by the way, is just a little like journal like bug clip from Paloma the Peaches store. Sometimes I'll use binder clips, but since they came out with these, I thought they were really adorable, so I had to get one. I'm gonna start with the shadow colors.
So as usual, I like to start with all of the dark tones in any portrait or any sort of thing that I'm drawing. I like to like lay out all of those dark colors first so that I can see what the rest is and fill in all of the other things midway, like all the midtones and the highlights and all the fun things in the background. And I mix this like kind of medium brown color to do that, and then I started to fill in those areas of just like a base skin tone color. I'm gonna build on a lot of these colors a lot, but right now I'm just laying down some bases, which isn't necessarily going to be the color that I end up going with or even keeping. It's just something to lay it out so that there's no blank areas and that I kind of get an idea of what color I want to put there later, especially if I want to keep building on details and shadows and stuff. I need that area to have some kind of color, and it also like reminds me what color I'm going to put there later on. And I tried a little brush technique with the watercolor here where I just used a completely dry brush to just kind of pick up the excess wet paint because I didn't need that much there, and also to try to blend out that area just a tiny bit because I wanted like some soft blushing around the eyes and the lips area because I didn't have a color there yet, and what I put there was just too vibrant. I wasn't ready to go with that bright of a color yet. And then I started to treat the watercolor kind of like how I paint with gouache, just like not too much water to get some kind of like texture and, you know, more pigments, because if it's watered down it's a duller color. And I just kind of kept painting the way that I use gouache. But since this is watercolor, it took some time for me to get used to because there were some points where I definitely needed more water than I was using, so I shouldn't have completely treated it like as if I was painting with gouache. But at some points it did help me out there, like with the details that I did in the face and the hair. And then with like the background, I sort of just treated it as if I was using watercolor, where it's just like very like flowy and not super textured. So for like all the leaves that I drew in the background, I don't know if you could tell if these were leaves when I showed you the sketch. but I just needed some pop of green back here, and I just colored those all in. And this part was the most fun because I was able to use this round brush to its full potential. And these kinds of brushes are really great for drawing like kind of things in nature, like plants and trees and stuff like that. These are really great for like doing little flowers, because like really the shape of like petals and stuff is really just like in how you use the paintbrush. So I use that to my advantage here with all of these very like flowy leaves, and again kind of with the background I wanted to do like a red and orange like bright little background. It's kind of like a sunset. I also think what was going on before with like all the dryness, it wasn't just the amount of water I was using, I think it was the brush, because as you can see I'm just having a lot more of ease with this kind of brush than that super dry, really old brush that I was using. And like the bristles are just too crunchy, and this kind of brush is just really smooth and easier to use. And I was probably using a little bit more water, but I think the motions with this brush was really helping as well.
An annoying thing that will happen with my wet palettes lately is that they'll curl. So I think maybe my paper towels are too big or too wet. I think my last palette, I literally like paper clipped it to the paper towel because it was just curling too much.
I also just realized that my last video was a watercolor painting as well, except with a product that I've been using for about a year or two, and this is obviously completely new. I don't know if I mentioned this when I was talking about like shopping at the art store, but I was there for a long time just like looking around for some kind of new product to try, because just want to do something different on the channel. Well, I've reviewed products before, but I wanted to try a new product and haven't like gotten any new art supplies since my paint markers that I got over the summer last year. And you know, sometimes artists get a bit bored of what we're using, and there's always new things coming out, new trends that people are trying. And I was just walking around looking for something new to try, like within a price range that I was comfortable with, because I was buying other things. And I almost bought these really expensive, super small set of gouache paint. I think it's a Japanese brand, and I've heard really great things about this kind of paint, and it was like 5 tubes for almost $30, and I was like, oh, I don't know if I should get this or not. Maybe another day. I'm gonna try some more products soon. I got some new markers, so I'm very excited to try those soon. But yeah, I've said this before that I'm not a huge fan of watercolor. I just feel like I'm not that great with it, so maybe that's why I don't like it as much. But there's also the thing that I always say, that like I get impatient with it because you really have to wait for it to dry, or you could, you know, use some kind of tissue to soak up some of the paint, but then you might have to paint that again. You know, there's just a skill that I don't have with watercolor yet. Of course, this looks great, but I was treating it like gouache, so I wasn't even thinking like, oh, this is watercolor. I just kind of felt like I was painting with gouache, because I've never used watercolor in this format before, where it's wet tubes or wet paint. It's always been the dry water activated ones that I've been using since, you know, in like middle school or elementary school, where you just like learn to paint. They give you those little watercolors. And then when I got older, I started using acrylic. So yeah, watercolor's been a little weird relationship with me.
I did have to clip this all down because it was just curling too much, and when that happens, the paint will just keep rolling and rolling, and it'll mix with the other paints when you don't want it to. So I had to clip this. I think I'm just using too much water because this only started happening recently. Anyway, just don't use too much water. I really like using this. Kind of like using gouache for me, where there's some points where you could add like lots of texture, where like there's not as much water, so it's a little bit dry, and so you get like more pigment when doing that. And with this, I'm able to just do stuff I've never been able to with watercolor before, which is having to constantly re-wet the palette because it's water activated, so it dries really fast. And this is like so much different than that, and I really like it, and I had a blast playing with this, and this might be like the new way that I use watercolor, especially if I can keep it in this palette. I had so much fun using this. It's just been really nice to relax and paint and draw because I haven't in a week, and I've just been so stressed with midterms and assignments and stuff and boring college things, and it's just been nice to sit down and paint for a bit, and I loved it. I really like using this. If you've never tried, I don't know what to call this, watercolor in a tube, it's just watercolor. If you've never tried it in this form, I recommend it. It works a lot easier and a bit different than the water activated kinds. I think this is a lot easier than using those, even though those, like, all of the paints are there and ready for you to use, and all you need is water. Sometimes you don't really have a space to mix colors if that's what you want to do, which is why they give you so many colors, but even then there's probably a color that you want that they don't have there. This, you can set up a palette, use it how you normally would with any other paints. Final thoughts / review, I really like it. I haven't reviewed like a new product since the summer, and it's a new year. I want to try stuff this year, do fun things with art and creativity, so this was really cool. I don't like the smell though. Definitely one of the like smellier paints that I have for some reason. Like I said before, it's kind of like vegetable kind of smell, with like a bit of a chemically smell. So if you know you have a ventilated space, go for it. That's the only like con, that it just like kind of smells weird. But I like using this. I love the texture, and I'm able to mix, and it dries relatively fast because I guess I'm not using as much water as I normally would with water activated watercolor. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed watching me paint and chat and try new products, and so I want to do more drawing challenges. Please recommend some below. I've done one color drawing challenge. So again, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you next time. Goodbye, everybody.